best thing about starting a Nintendo Switch channel 4 years after the Switch was first launched is that I've now got 4 years worth of games to talk about. 4 years of some awesome and some equally terrible games. With an increase in sales of over 6 million units in 2020 alone, more and more people are turning their attention to the hybrid system and some of the indie games it has to offer. With the Switch's heavy emphasis on indie developments, smaller teams are having the opportunity to showcase smaller titles to a much larger audience. As many of these games have been out for a while now, it's also not uncommon to find these indie gems at a much reduced price. With this in mind, the game I want to look at today, which I've been playing for the last week, as I managed to get it on a sale, is the highly lauded The Messenger. The Messenger was initially released by Sabotage Studios on August the 30th for the Switch and on Steam. This was the first game completed by the indie developer and is a 2D action platformer / Metroidvania. The story of The Messenger sees a village of ninjas being attacked by a demon king. During the onslaught, a Western hero appears, passing a mysterious scroll to one of the surviving ninjas. This unnamed ninja is then instructed to carry this scroll east to the top of the mountain, hence The Messenger. On arrival, well, more things happen. I don't want to ruin the entire story for you, but what I will say is that the story is multi-layered and much more expansive than at first glance. This level of story expansion is not massively evident until around 4 or 5 hours into the game. The first half of the game plays as a linear action platformer, very similar in style to the original Ninja Gaiden games, with the sole purpose of The Messenger delivering the scroll. You go from point A to B, then fight a boss at the end of each area. The platforming is smooth and the area design is varied. As you go along the linear portion of the game, you pick up loot in the form of small shiny things known as time shards that are frequently scattered around, and also in light fittings and candles that you can hit with your sword. You can also attain different abilities to help you traverse the increasingly challenging and varied environments you encounter. These abilities range from climbing the walls to the wingsuit, meaning you can float. It's nice. There's also a skill tree to spend your loot on in the random shops that appear throughout the game to give you added health or improve the abilities you attain. Once you reach your destination and defeat the final boss, you kind of assume at that point that the game is over. As fun as the game was, I'd resigned myself to the fact that the credits were about to roll and I'd had a good time with a fairly competent 2D action platformer. As you've probably guessed, however, the game does not end there. In fact, turns out you're not even really halfway through. Story-wise, I won't give anything away, but very quickly you realise that the game has shifted from a linear platformer to a Metroidvania type experience. All of the levels you have just traversed are merely sections of a much larger overworld with hidden passages and entrances for you to uncover. If you've played the original Metroid games, or Castlevania, or more recently Hollow Knight, you'll understand the kind of game I'm talking about. Now, I do understand that Metroidvanias are 10 a penny at this point, but this wasn't so much the case back in 2018. And it's a good one. So there you go. Also, your mission's now shifted. Rather than merely getting to the end of a section, you're tasked with finding magical music notes scattered around the overworld. What this does mean is there is a fair bit of backtracking to unveil new story elements and to find new passageways hidden in the different areas. I didn't find the backtracking too annoying, as you spend the time looking for secret passageways rather than going from A to B and getting through the levels. Depending on the kind of games you enjoy, you might find it annoying having to backtrack to older levels a number of times. This, however, is the nature of a Metroidvania, Really, it's not too difficult to get around, and I found the platforming so much fun, it never really bothered me. What also changes in the second half of the game is the added ability of time travel. By moving through a shiny beam of light or into a shiny circle, you can traverse between two time periods. Either the period you've been operating in for the first half of the game, or 500 years later. These time periods are portrayed as either 8-bit or 16-bit respectively. Often the two time periods have different exits or passageways that can be entered only in that time period. This makes for an interesting puzzle platform mechanic that I've not seen in any other game that I can think of. I don't think there's anything like it. The gameplay as a whole is magnificent. At first, what may be seen as quite a generic 2D platformer transforms with the acquisition of these different power-ups and abilities into something unique and special. It performs very, very well and is fluent from the get-go. You get a great sense of achievement by pulling off some quick fluid move to get from one side of a room to the other. Visually, I did experience one occasion where the game glitched and I miraculously disappeared out the top of the screen. However, a quick reset did fix it straight away. Other than that, I found the game very responsive and reactive. Although I had read articles and comments stating about the issues they had at launch with the Messenger's performance, particularly in the latter levels when a lot of things are going on at once, I honestly didn't notice it. Maybe it's been patched since. Throughout your adventure, you'll meet some great characters that either help or hinder your way to the finish. Of course, you have generic enemies that are there to halt you in your tracks. These are usually one-hit kill enemies, however, do become a nuisance depending on where they're positioned. Personally, I think it would have been nice to have a little more variety with these generic enemies. It was a bit strange to see the same enemies from level 1 or the first area in the final area of the game. The real fun for me character-wise came when reaching the varied and unique boss battles throughout my adventure. The interaction between these boss battles and the Messenger is quite hilarious. The game doesn't take itself seriously and often mocks itself through some great sarcastic script writing. This hilarity also continues to those characters who are there to help you throughout your journey, including the little devil man who takes some of your loot when you die, and the blue hooded figure who works at the shops you enter along the way. The writing's great and had me smiling throughout my adventure. Obviously, with the 16-bit graphics, visually the game's not going to be for everybody. Particularly those who maybe have no nostalgic feeling towards the 18 or 16-bit eras of the NES or the SNES. For what they are, however, I think the visuals are great. Clearly this game is influenced by games like Ninja Gaiden, however the time travelling mechanic gives the visuals in this game a modern twist. If you are put off by the retro visuals, I would say look past it, because when you do, you'll find a great gaming experience here. It's not just the visuals, gameplay and story which perform superbly in the Messenger. The audio is sublime. The soundtrack is truly fitting in the game's aesthetic. It's got sort of an EDM vibe. The music flows very well with the visuals and changes depending on the setting, whether that be the environment or the time period. The music even muffles when the Messenger swims underwater, which is a nice touch. At a certain point in the game, you get the option to change the music to any track you like. I'm not usually one for listening to video game soundtracks, but if I was, this one would definitely be one I'd consider. As with many of these styles of games, it's not the easiest game in the world. No matter how fluid and concise, the platforming can be tricky to master, especially as you acquire new skills along your adventure. You do have to get used to these skills very quickly. The truth is you will die a lot in this game. By the end of my playthrough, my death toll was in the hundreds. The little red devil likes to remind you every now and then how many times you've died. That's nice to know. The bosses as well are likely to take a few goes until you finish them off. It's just a case of understanding how they operate. Once you've learned their moveset and understand how to avoid their blows, it shouldn't be too long before you finish them off. In my opinion though, no matter how difficult some sections of the game are, the deaths never felt cheap. I always felt that when I died it was down to my lack of skill, rather than the game being unnecessarily difficult like you see in other games. One area I did find challenging was finding the musical notes in the Metroidvania part of the game. It took me quite a long time to realise you could buy hints from the shopkeeper. Once I found this out, however, it didn't take me long to get through the game. Notice well that there are also power seals to collect. 45 in total, scattered throughout the world. Once you've upgraded your skill tree sufficiently, you'll have the option to view where all the coins are via a map you can open. These can be challenging to collect even when you know where they are, however the sections are a good amount of fun and something extra for you to grit your teeth into, which gives the game a little bit more longevity. So what are my overall thoughts about this game as a whole? Well, I had a lot of fun with it. I think the storytelling, the visuals, the audio and the gameplay are superb. At every turn it made me want to play on until the very end. I think the generic enemy variety could have been expanded and the backtracking may be annoying to some. But as a throwback 8/16-bit adventure, I think Sabotage Studios have done a stunning job at designing and building a modern variant of two classic gaming formulas. I highly recommend The Messenger, despite its age, and I implore anyone who hasn't played the game to give it a go. I know a lot of people like numbered ratings, so for that reason, and for those people, I give The Messenger an 8.5 out of 10. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you want to see more of this kind of content, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.